Welcome to the third in our series of Pencils Down, which is MA Group's collaboration with NeueHouse. NeueHouse is the private workspace and cultural home that has seen many startups and many very well-established businesses grow and thrive within a living, breathing community. Part of this series is to gather today's leading minds in fashion, innovation, visual arts, and the humanities, fresh off the heels of their latest works. We discuss their most timely collaborations and defining the way we consume culture along the way. So today, I have the privilege of introducing Massimiliano Di Battista. It has to be said like that. Founder and CEO of the MA Group, Nick Blunden, the president of the Business of Fashion, and Lucy Yeomans, who is the founding CEO of Drest. And we're going to be exploring the convergence of fashion, gaming, music, and art to create new modes of entertainment and possibly a future of retail. So we have quite a lot of participants now. Just a little note, if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A that you see in the bottom navigation panel. And a few minutes before the end of our 30-minute session, I'll field them and put them to the panel if we have time. So Mao, over to you. You're the one with the questions.
There you go. Well, thank you, Luisa. Thank you for introducing me and our wonderful guests. This is a first for me, so I please everybody apologize my potential mistakes. I'm not a good public speaker. I'm normally behind the scenes, and I'm normally like the one who creates and puts it all together rather than being in front of a screen. But I'll try my best. And I'm very excited to have here today Lucy Yeomans, who I know for quite a long time, I have to say, through our different steps in our careers, and Nick Blunden, who's like the president of Business of Fashion, that we all avidly read every day and every morning to know what's happening in our world. So I would like to start with a question to Lucy, because I know Lucy, since her times at Harper's Bazaar UK, as you were editor-in-chief of the magazine, and then became the founding editor-in-chief of Porter, the Net-a-Porter's editorial arm. So I wanted to ask you, did you ever envision you would become a gaming entrepreneur, and what sparked the idea for the gamification of fashion with Drest?
Well, Mao, I think you all know the answer to this one, because we were used to spending so much time organizing these epic cover shoots and fashion shoots, so we were interacting in a very different way. So no, I didn't. I don't yet have a skateboard. I don't yet have a rucksack, but I'm sure I'm on my way. No, I mean, for me, I first became interested in gaming actually towards the end of my editorship of Harper's Bazaar. I think it was actually my nephews who kind of introduced me to this world. I think I was the kind of aunt who on my way back from Fashion Week would kind of pick up a PlayStation and some of the latest games for them. And I remember I think they were playing the Harry Potter game at the time. And I remember just thinking it was this extraordinary world. It was literally like this beautiful recreated world. It was almost like going on to like the set of like an Alex de Batac show or something. It was so beautiful and so all-consuming. And I just kind of became rather fascinated by it. Also noting that there wasn't very much out there for young women and girls to play at the same time. But that was quite a while ago. Then interestingly, when I kept getting fascinated by it. And then I was actually invited on Facebook to play by quite a few friends started inviting me to play this game called Farmville. And they were people like I knew and respected. They were kind of interesting people like in our world. And I was like, what is this thing? And I found myself getting rather compelled to play this kind of game where I had to kind of create my own farm and strawberries and everything. And I remember thinking, God, this is quite a compelling experience, and it's very interactive, and there's community and all these kind of elements. And I remember thinking, wow, wouldn't it be amazing? Wouldn't fashion is ripe for the story, the narrative, the competition, the identity, the world. And I just started kind of percolating these ideas about, like, I think I wrote down a proposal then, like as a fashion game, and you were like a sort of Monopoly, but with fashion and all these kind of elements just in my spare time. And then interestingly, when I was at Net-a-Porter, I was, you know, and obviously during that time, so many changes in fashion, you know, the development of social media, all these kind of different elements. But I kept finding that brands were coming to us and saying, how do I reach this new audience? How do I, you know, I've got millennials, Gen Zs, they're not completely content with the traditional fashion content experience. They want something where they have more agency, where they're part of the dialogue. And then I started thinking, wow, that's exactly what gaming does. Gaming allows you to have your say, allows you to have agency. And so for me, I suddenly thought, gosh, there's actually a huge amount of similarity between these worlds. And also the interesting thing about gaming is that you create an environment that's actually quite controlled. So you're creating a kind of universe that's controlled, but then within that you have agency. Now, all of us have worked closely, and Mao, you and I have worked very closely with luxury brands on specific projects, etc. They, you know, luxury is about having a control of the environment, and then we know how to operate within that and create within that. And I thought, this is so exciting. This could actually democratize that luxury fashion discovery experience. And another moment for me also, I think, was standing, like, I think it was just after my husband proposed, and he in Rome, and we were standing on the Spanish steps, and I was looking down, and there's a Gucci store right at the bottom, and I saw all these people lining up, and I thought, I don't know if we're making content that speaks to all those people that have this aspiration around this brand. And so for me, gaming was a way to kind of, you know, gaming for me was a way to kind of democratize that experience, to give agency, and really to open up that world of fashion to others. And obviously, as any of us who've had young children through the pandemic know, that display is the best way of discovering, being part of a conversation, having agency, having a role in it. And that is exactly what gaming allows. So it allows you to take the content experience from a one-way to a two-way, a one-way experience to a two-way conversation. And that excited me as a content maker.
This is such an incredible, fantastic trajectory, you know, going from like the editorial world to becoming entrepreneur and in the gaming. And like, I love it. It's such I think it's a wonderful, beautiful example to see how many chapters in life can exist. And now coming on to you, Nick, you know, I'd like to quickly introduce you. You know, you have background in advertising as managing director and CEO of ad agency and various executive titles at the Economist Group. And now you're the president of the Business of Fashion. Again, we avidly read that Business of Fashion every single day. And what we love of the Business of Fashion is that it informs us in all the intersection between fashion, tech, art, business, design, and gaming. And all the new ways of like for luxury industries and fashion in general to interact with their customers. So I'd like to know from you, like, you know, how is Business of Fashion successfully navigating, you know, all these elements during the wake of the pandemic?
Thank you, Mao. It's a great question, and thanks so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, if you think about the context of the last 12 months, first of all, I think you have to recognize what a, you know, terrible health crisis we've lived through, what a terrible economic crisis. But it's also been a very, very difficult time for the global fashion industry. You know, consumption and the industry as a whole has dropped dramatically. The industry is something like 30% smaller now than it was a year ago. Industry profits have dropped by over 90%. Something like 3/4 of all listed fashion companies lost money in the last year. And, you know, the sort of whole fashion ecosystem has been through a tremendous shock, from supply chains through changes in consumer behavior. It's almost every part of the industry has been put under an unprecedented amount of pressure. And, you know, that's a very, very challenging thing for the industry to go through. But when we look at that, we see a huge number of stories to tell. You know, amongst all of that chaos, it is very clear, I think, from our vantage point, that the future fashion industry is going to look very different from the industry that came before. and that the sort of, you know, the sort of model of success, if you like, the playbook for fashion companies that probably has remained roughly the same for the last 20 or 30 years, needs to dramatically shift as we start to look beyond the pandemic. And, you know, when we look at that, we think there is an opportunity to build a better fashion industry coming out of this pandemic, not just a new fashion industry. The fashion industry is extraordinary. It's or was a $2.6 trillion industry, incredibly creative, you know, incredibly successful businesses born out of that industry over the last 50 years. But it also has some huge challenges to address around sustainability, around diversity, around inclusivity. And, you know, we believe that the story of the reinvention of the fashion industry is the biggest story that the, you know, from a journalistic perspective of the last 50 years in terms of the fashion industry itself. You know, and BOF was actually born out of a, you know, a recession. And at times of big crisis like this, I think, you know, companies like BOF, you know, whether it's BOF looking at the fashion industry or the New York Times looking at, you know, at the globe, have a really interesting role to play to help people understand the chaos that's going on, but also to help people see the opportunities. And, you know, one of the things that I find incredibly inspiring about the fashion industry is the amount of creativity that's going on. And amongst all of this challenge, there are really, really, really interesting innovations. I mean, Lucy is a shining example of this. Incredible innovation going on in the industry, as you say, at the intersection, not just of fashion, but the intersection of fashion and technology and fashion and art and fashion and gaming. And so there are just so many stories for us to tell, but it's also an incredibly interesting time to be looking at the evolution of the fashion industry.
Yeah, you're right. It is a very special moment, and it is a moment of innovation. It is a moment of acceleration. And I feel that we will all look at this time as a real a moment of big changes in our industry, and it will take some time to go through it, but we'll definitely look at that as a moment of big change. So I'd like to go back now to Lucy and talk quickly about Drest. So Drest users are presented with a goal of becoming a top fashion stylist via challenges like dressing clients for the Met Ball or styling supermodels for a fashion shoot. Finished looks are then submitted to a community homepage where users can rate them, and the best receiving virtual prizes. Can you tell us more about the purpose of functionality of the app and the game? And as well, can you tell us about your partnership with Farfetch and what does that mean? You're muted.
I'm muted, sorry. I caught myself. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I think, you know, Nick raises a lot of points, a lot of the challenges. For me, I get excited when we can, you know, I've always been, and Mao, you know this about me as an editor, I always kind of put my women at the center of everything I did when I was editor of Bazaar. I always wanted to give her something. And I feel like for me, I just want to be where the consumer is. And for me, like with Drest, really what I wanted to do is democratize that experience. I have had the most incredible career in this industry. It's amazing. I've had access, worked with the best brands, you know, had incredible encounters with designers, heard their stories, etc. It's an incredible world to be immersed in. And what I really wanted to do with Drest was to give that sense of all those amazing creative aspects of our industry to our users and to allow them to sort of do it. So for example, as a magazine editor, I had top stylists, top photographers, brands, hair, makeup, all those kind of elements. And I was always amazed, actually. There were certain blogs, whenever we did a cover and we'd have the community would come out and say, God, I would have done it like this. I would have done it like this. And I wanted to harness all that creativity that was out there, all that love of fashion, that aspiration of fashion. And we talked about it the other day, that sense of allowing people to discover through play. So when people come to Drest, they come into a newsfeed, which looks very much like a sort of Vogue.com or an Elle.com. It will have stories of the day, if it's the Met Ball, if it's the Valentino show that's just happened in Rome, or whatever kind of amazing moment that's happening in fashion, or just a big trend that everybody's talking about, or a product launch from a brand. And they'll get the story rather than like they consume their news story. But then rather than leave them with the story, we say, okay, so now you've read the story, here's the product, now go and show us what you can do with it. And it's that sense of, it's incredibly tactile, it's incredibly immersive, and also it means we can move people around our, you know, our curation of fashion in a very sort of smart, clever way, but it leaves them with the ability. So people can come in, they can either do a photo shoot or they can create a mood board. This is my mood board behind me here, which I created. I know we're going to talk about Hey Riley a little bit later, but using some of the assets from there. But really it was that sense, you know, I was always, you know, I'm a fan of social media and I love what it's done to the world. But what I was interested here was that I still feel that while that group of curators in the industry is, you know, it used to be just a few editors and stylists who had the ability to say what was in fashion, and everybody saw the world through their lens. Obviously, with social media, that group was widened, but you still had to either have access to the brands or you had to look a certain way. And what excited me here is that through the virtual, from the virtual rendering of the real, we could effectively allow everyone to come and access this world and get creative in this world and discover brands through play, through styling, through virtual try on. And so people come and they get given these tasks to style shoots, as you say, that they create their looks. They've got a series of, I always call it like the editor's run through. Have you used the Armani jacket? Have you done this? You know, very much everything we do in Drest is based in real. We had a problem this morning about something, and I said, think about what we do in real fashion world. I always take it back to the beginning. And so really it's a chance for people to feel like they can step into this world. We have this, when I was always pitching this piece, my other half actually said to me, so God, I was doing it actually, I think it was Patrick Stewart's agent of all people I was telling Dress to, and he said, this is so complicated. So what, everything in the game is real. And then, you know, it's real brands, real people, real models. And, you know, he got so confused. So I had to come up with a terminology, which is RVR. So everything in Dress starts in the real. It's the product live as it drops into Farfetch, which I'll come on to in a minute. The models are real. The talent is real. We put them in real life locations, etc. It's all in real time as fashion is happening. We then spin it up into this beautiful virtual space, which is sustainable, it's scalable, it's controllable in that sort of the codes of luxury. It respects those codes of luxury, but also allows people to come, discover and play in a safe, sustainable environment. And then at the end, there's a potential real world outcome. We have everything that you see in Drest is available to buy either via our partnership with Farfetch or from the brands directly themselves. And so there's an ability at the end of the process that people can add something to basket. They can go through and explore on the brand's website, or it may just be as one of the pieces that that's interests me is that sort of, you know, the fact that we're looking after that, you know, we're driving and growing aspiration in the customer of the future, and people are really developing brand affinities. We can see it very clearly in the game. Players find their brands, they discover their aesthetic through play and through this experience. So so when we started this, I went to Farfetch. Actually, Natalie Massimiliano obviously was there at the time, and Stephanie Fair, who's the COO, was there. So I met with that team. Farfetch are obviously incredibly innovative. The way that their system works means that we can actually pull the product through from their site in a way that most e-commerce sites can't, which is exciting. And so what we tend to do with Farfetch is it's kind of, what do we call it? It's like a bilateral affiliate. We drive players to Farfetch and Farfetch drive their stylists and customers to us. And we go in and we curate the brands that we think are right for Dress. We go to each of the brands individually, sign them on. But it means that we have that steady flow of products. So every day in the game, there's 50 or 100 new products that have just dropped going into the game. And that means that people can style with them, play with it, experiment, look at how other people style with them, and then potentially have that lovely purchase at the end of it as well. So it's that nice seamless journey from inspiration and styling and play through to a final purchase. I
love it. It's kind of genius. And as I was telling you the other day, I can wait for you to have boys as well, so I can test it as well.
It's on the roadmap, but I've been told I've got to wait a bit. But I'm always pushing, Yeah.
And I will join immediately.
Yeah.
So coming back to you, Nick, now, so I'd like to ask you, so do you feel that Drest is paving the way? We have an issue in fashion, and that's coming up, like particularly in the last couple of years, more and more. It's mass production and excessive waste. And we've been talking. This is an issue of our industry. It's become a political issue. And do you feel that Drest can pave the way to designing and styling virtually, with items then being created to order, and therefore potentially cutting down on overproduction? Do you think this might lead into like a new ways of consuming fashion that is less about overproduction?
Yeah, I do. And just to put that overproduction issue in context, because it is a huge issue. When I talked earlier about the sort of, reinvention of the industry, I think that sits at the very heart of it. And just to give you a context, this isn't something even that the pandemic has introduced. Even before the pandemic, something like only 60% of garments produced in the fashion industry were sold at full price. And that led to, huge amounts of waste and billions of dollars of lost revenue as well. And of course, the pandemic has made that worse and made it more acute. But this overproduction and overconsumption issue has been something that the industry has been grappling with for some time. And I think, the pandemic has just increased the urgency with which it needs to be solved. So when we look forward, 2021 and beyond, and think about predictions for how the industry will change, clearly that's one of the things that we're looking at. And we believe that fashion brands across every segment and every geography will need to look very carefully about how they can change their business models so they are not reliant solely on more and more consumption to drive growth. And in that context, you look at services, digital services like Drest and others, as playing an important part in that. And I don't know the ins and outs of Lucy's roadmap with Drest, but certainly you look at where it is now and you see that it plays, an important role in enabling people, one, to play with fashion without necessarily having to buy it, and it's, as I've said to Lucy, it's very addictive. But you get an opportunity to sate your passion for playing around and styling fashion without necessarily having to buy the products. Of course, you can buy the products as well, but also it gives you the opportunity to try things, to style stuff, and decide on what you want. So I'm sure if you're Farfetch, that is interesting in the context of returns. But also if you sort of play forward how these things might play out, and I know Lucy talked about the fact that it's real, virtual to real, but one might see a world in which fashion companies use services like Drest to try, to test products before they even make them. So they can model demand. And, there are other ways of modeling demand using AI and that kind of stuff, but that's a really interesting play. And then of course, you can also see a future where services like Drest play a role in sort of the made to order model that I think increasingly, if fashion is to solve the sustainability issues that so plague it, made to order is going to have to become a much, much bigger part of the fashion industry. And, clearly, if you sort of project forward, I can see Drest and services like that playing a really, really important part in driving that, made to order part of the fashion ecosystem. So, this is the kind of innovation I think that is really central to a better future for the fashion industry.
Yeah.
And Mao, just to add to that we're already working with a couple of brands who are looking, as Nick suggested, smartly suggested, is actually trying the prototypes out, trying the different colorways, seeing where product resonates in different territories. It's really, really interesting. Some of the brand partnerships that we've done, we work closely with brands like Gucci, we just did our first product partnership last week. They're already starting to see trends in different countries. And I remember years ago going to like a Saint Laurent collection, and they put this whole collection and slightly skewed it for China, I think, and actually it completely bombed, and it wasn't what that audience wanted. So this is a way for people to kind of test products in markets, see which demographics they resonate with, and hopefully, as Nick said, do that prior to production so that they can really look at making sure that they're delivering exactly the product that's going to resonate in that market and stop this horrible challenge of overproduction that we all know is a massive problem for our industry.
Now, I've magically reappeared just to say that we have 3 minutes.
I know.
But we can go over for a little bit. So
over a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because there are a few more things. I mean, this half an hour has gone like by in a second. So, and there are a few more touch points that I wanted to discuss all together. One with you, Lucy, is actually about our collaboration, because we work together with one of our talents, Hey Riley, who is like is a magnificent, irreverent, incredible artist. And you decided to actually work with him to create animated assets and logo for Drest, and as well as like James Lavelle, who did the sound. So how has this been received by your by your customer base?
Oh, they absolutely loved it. We work with Hey Riley, who is just magical, and he was so perfect for us because he's got this irreverent, modern, humorous, but it's just a brilliant voice. And obviously, you know, I'd seen a lot of his work from Gucci, Fendi, all of his clients. It was fun, and it was playful, and it was entertaining. And that's why, you know, I'm very fortunate to have a lovely creative director, Jay Hess, who I know worked closely with Hey Riley on this. But, you know, it was a big step for him. Suddenly we were launching 6 supermodels in the game. He was working with avatars of Natalia Vodinova, Iman Haman, Marina Sheikh. You know, it was definitely a learning journey for us all. But what he created was magical. He creates universes and worlds. And actually, I was interviewing a candidate for a big technology strategist in our team yesterday. And it was as if I was having a conversation with Hey Riley. Sometimes I find everyone thinks that like the technology team and the engineers and the art directors are going to be like this. And actually often they have a lot of the same attributes. They're dreamers, they're delivering these incredible worlds. And that's why Hey Riley was so much fun for us. The supermodels absolutely loved it. You know, we're also taking them out of their comfort zone. They're turning into avatars. We're changing their outfits. We're styling. We're, you know, they've got pinballs shooting out of their, I don't know, I can't see a pinball, bubbles. It's a kind of crazy world that he creates, but it was amazing. It became a kind of really nice kind of viral hit, which was fantastic. The supermodels loved sharing it on their social and had an incredible reaction, as did our customers. It worked really, really well. I think it just showed the kind of magic and the possibility, and in a really exciting way. And it was lovely for me because I was back working with you and your team, and that made me feel like I was stepping back into my old world, but in a very nice, exciting new way.
Yeah. We're very excited as well. This is a question for both of you, and it's actually about you know, the wonderful element about working with technology is that we get a lot of data out of that, and something that surprised me is that 63% of mobile gamers are women, and you know, and many of them you know, they want to move beyond the classic solitaires or cards gaming. And so is gaming going to be the new retail experience? And you know, it's like, it's unbelievable. I mean, to me, I always thought that gaming was more of a male you know, approach rather than female. It doesn't look like that. How is this going to change our industry? And like I'm really curious from both of you, like from you, Nick, like, you know, you must be reading and seeing a lot of data all the time. And, you know, what's the future of retail and gaming and e-commerce and all of that? I know it's a big question, but maybe just give us a quick hint from your side.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating area, and it is a massive topic. You know, I think one of the things that one has to think about, that, you know, for a lot of people, shopping historically has been entertainment, and gaming is entertainment. And you put those things together, you know, then suddenly you think about this, and this isn't such a big leap. But, you know, clearly, you know, one of the things that the pandemic has done is accelerated the digitization of the fashion industry. You can see it in retail, huge shifts from physical retail to digital retail, to e-commerce. Of course, one of the challenges historically with e-commerce is it's been very transactional. You know, you think about what Amazon does brilliantly is the transaction. And one of the things that I think problems that needs to be solved in the e-commerce world is this concept of discoverability. Not, oh, I know what I want to buy and I'm going to go and buy it, but, you know, introducing people to new brands, to new products. And one of the things that I think is really exciting about gaming is that is beginning to solve the discoverability challenge around e-commerce. And I think, that will, along with the natural shift from physical retail to digital retail or to e-commerce, and then you add in gaming as this solution to this discoverability issue, means that I think gaming, fashion, e-commerce, retail are all coming together in really, really exciting ways. So, I'm not one of those people who thinks that physical retail is entirely dead, but I do think that, when you bring together the intersection of e-commerce and gaming, it will turbocharge, the shift of the industry further and further towards e-commerce.
Yep.
What's your feeling, Lucy, in particular, you come from print publishing as well. So it's like, how, what's the whole interaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about fun. It's about agency. It's, gaming for me, I see gaming everywhere. I see social media as a game. I see people, or, in a way with social media, what excited me was that you had all of these different lenses on the world of fashion, or the different worlds that social media obviously permeates. But for me, it's like you create an image. How many likes do you get? How many, how often do we sort of, it's like you think, do I post this image or that image? Which one's going to resonate more? Before the pandemic, my BA Miles card, I don't really know the difference between, what the lounge is like in silver or gold, but I know I get a little bit of a kick when my arrow goes round and I'm like, oh, great, I'm on to the next level. So I think that sense of leveling up and gaming is actually, it's more in our society than we think. I mean, it was interesting, Mal, going on this roadshow. When I took Drest out to market 2 years ago after I left Net-a-Porter, I remember my very first trip to New York and just being so nervous, having to walk into Hermes and Ralph Lauren, all these big brands, and how are these conversations going to go? I found the industry so open to it, particularly once they saw the quality of what we built and the fact that we've been, we worked so hard with the avatars and the replication of the product and all these kind of elements. So there was a reassurance there. But I also was surprised by how many gamers I met on my journey. My first actual presentation was with the lovely Tabitha Simmons. And after 20 minutes of talking about Fortnite for her son, she finally confessed to being a gamer and being level 450 on Candy Crush, but there was no game that spoke to her. I think I mentioned the other day that I saw Kate Moss. She told me she also was a gamer, and how wonderful now that there was a game that had that was in her world, and she wouldn't get told off by her daughter for playing a silly game, and she could pretend she was shopping. So it's interesting, you said that women are gamers. Women don't like to be perceived as gamers, and one of our challenges, I think, will probably be to reframe what it means to be a female gamer. But there's no doubt that it's exciting, it's interactive, it allows people to come and get close to our world in this kind of virtual, scalable, sustainable space. And I really love the point Nick made the other day about discoverability. It allows people to discover that fashion place, and actually it makes it quite a level playing field for the brands. When you're creating a look and you've got to finish that look with the perfect bag, and you're like, I need a pop of purple, you're looking at purple bags and you're seeing all the brands, and it's about which one looks great. And the smaller brands, it's a lovely space actually for the new brands to make themselves heard, because it's about how good something looks, not what the brand is, or obviously we do brand partnerships, but it's a beautiful place to discover the fashion world. And really, whether I always thought that we would develop more aspiration in the luxury space amongst the younger gamers, and our community is kind of like 18 to 60, but also that idea of delighting the existing fashion customers. And I remember there was one brand actually, and I said to my fashion director, I said, oh my God, this is a really cool new brand that you've brought into the game. When did this brand launch? And she said, Lucy, that was a brand that's been on this, has been in the new face, I don't know, the Vanguard. I can't remember what the new brand section of Net-a-Porter was, but they said, oh, it's been there for 5 years. And I was kind of in charge of the content for that piece, and I hadn't heard of it. So it was kind of like that idea of discovering is such a tough thing. Nick talks about it a lot, and it's a tough piece to kind of crack. And I think that discovery through play and through immersion is the exciting piece for me. It was what really struck me about the gaming world.
Yep.
I'd like to finish the conversation with one of the questions. We got a lot of different questions, but I think that one is quite interesting. And I picked this one, and it says, it seems Drest is catering to a more affluent audience. Are there plans to expand to brands a bit less expensive?
It was interesting, actually, because at the very beginning, I had a couple of people in the industry saying, are you sure this is right for luxury? Are you sure this is the right space you want to be in? Should you be doing something with ASOS? Should you be operating in a different space? I think about gaming. Gaming has a kind of way of there's so much aspiration in the brands and the dreams and the fantasy. And for me, the luxury fashion space has all of that aspiration that we can really play to in that gaming narrative. When you're leveling up, you're progressing, you want to be going for the very, very best. So I am very comfortable in that fashion space, but definitely once we have the luxury fashion piece, you know, we've had quite a lot of outreaches from people in the more kind of mid-market space, and I think there's opportunities there. But for me, it was the fantasy and the kind of gaming is about, it's about your identity and where you want to be and being a superhero or being a super stylist. So for me, the luxury, it really fit well with that luxury fashion experience. So that's what excited me. But yes, there's plans for other models as well, Mal. Yes.
Good, great, wonderful.
Great. All right, so we are almost 10 minutes over, but that was a very rich 10 minutes. I'd just like to add in one thing that we didn't get to, which is about just the sheer kind of creativity, the fun aspect, and the serotonin like spike that you get when you game. So sort of coincidentally, as I was prepping for the next webinar, which is with Kristin Lee Mullman, one of MA's photographers, and there is an article about her on Business of Fashion. She said it was the best piece of journalism she had experienced personally. She said that during the pandemic, she had an epiphany, this special moment when she realized she had to move from photography into film, and it was when she was gaming. So, you know, I think that there's something very rich there, that enabling yourself to have those moments of play and just freeing your mind can actually, you know, with the removal of stress, it can really help you move into a different phase or, you know, something really quite magical. So, a couple of questions were, are we recording this session and will it be sent out? The answer is yes. Probably within a week, we'll do a little bit of editing, and it will be on MA Group's YouTube and LinkedIn channels as well. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining. Especially I'd like to thank Mao, Lucy, and Nick. We barely touched the surface, but
I know. I can't wait for round 2. We have to do an update like in 6 months or a year and see where we are, because many things will be changing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an exciting time. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll be in touch with everyone soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thanks.